Hi, it's Friday afternoon and time to look back at what happened this week at Queen's Park. The legislature was not sitting, but committees were meeting, and in particular, the budget bill was considered at committee. Last week on the COVID front, an emergency brake was applied, but the Premier realized that was not enough, and we moved to a stay-at-home order this week. So I'm going to be talking about what was done. And then the main points of contention between the opposition parties and the government. Basically, that the models said a long time ago that this was going to happen and the government could have acted earlier. If you'd like to hear more, please keep watching. Otherwise, please join me next Friday as I talk about what happened this week at Queen's Park. This week was a constituency week, so the legislature was not sitting, but committees did meet. The most important one was the Finance and Economic Affairs Committee meeting to hear witnesses on the budget bill. It led off this morning, Friday morning at 9 o'clock, with the finance minister, who always leads off the witnesses on the budget. Our local MPP, Ian Arthur, sits on this committee, and I thank him for his work. I listened to a bit of the testimony this afternoon. There was a witness from Communitech, which is a Kitchener-Waterloo kind of startup growth community. And he made a point which I've seen other people make and occurred to me when I was working on the housing task force here in Kingston. And that is that the hot housing market is drawing talented people and money into housing. And those resources could be going more into startups, companies offering innovative products and services. And that's what we need for a stronger economy and more and better jobs on the other side of this pandemic. So it's something we need to pay a lot of attention to, I think. On the COVID front, let me start with some good news, which is that this week there was only one death in long-term care homes in Ontario. And that's a great improvement thanks to the vaccination program that has now been more or less completed. However, the overall number of cases is increasing. 2 weeks ago, it was about 2,000 in Ontario. 1 week ago, about 3,000. And today, it was over 4,000. More worrying than that is that the number of ICU, intensive care unit patients, has now exceeded the second wave that occurred over Christmas. And that means that a lot of procedures, a lot of medical services have been cut back because of that, because of the hospitals preparing for all of these patients. So last week, the province applied what they called an emergency brake, but realized that that wasn't enough as the numbers continued to rise. So this week it was changed to a stay-at-home order. There are much stricter limits on what businesses can do and what people are supposed to do, social gatherings, and so on. The province did some good things with this stay-at-home order. It's targeting vaccinations to hotspots, to educators, to adult residents, and to workers at large workplaces like warehouses. So it's targeting places where we know that a lot of transmission is occurring. And it's relying on local health officials to make decisions about things like schools and what to do about local outbreaks. A local outbreak was declared here in Kingston at Queen's University, and as a result, today Breakwater Park was completely closed. The opposition criticism of the government focused on the fact that Premier Ford should have followed the requests of health experts based on data and models that showed that the number of ICU patients and the overall number of cases was going to increase because of the variants of the virus. We saw what happened in the United Kingdom when they had a new variant. And in fact, that is the dominant variant here in Ontario. So we had a lot of warning, and I guess a really good indication for me, I think the government not really understanding how to use models. The Solicitor General, who's a member of the cabinet, Doug Ford's cabinet, Sylvia Jones, she was asked, why did you wait until Thursday to issue a stay-at-home order? And her answer was that we wanted to make sure that the modeling was actually showing up in our hospitals. And unfortunately, that's not how models are supposed to be used. Models are used in a way that it tells you how many sick people you should be prepared for without waiting for people to get sick. It's just the wrong, I guess, philosophy for how to use models. And I think that if they had listened to the scientists a bit more, they would have realized that they should be prepared for this current third wave that we're experiencing. And the number of patients in intensive care units was not a surprise. It was in the models. The full legislature returns next week. The pandemic continues, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot to report next Friday. Please tell me what you think in the comments below, and please join me next week as I talk about what happened at Queen's Park.